Jake Morrison collected forgotten items after the diplomatic summit ended: datapads, styluses, various personal effects left behind by distracted delegates. Among them, an elegant leather planner, clearly expensive, embossed with subtle Althari symbols. As conference coordinator for Gateway Station's diplomatic wing, Jake's job included returning lost items. He opened the planner looking for identification. The first page had a name: Queen Xylla Varen of the Althari Conquered. Jake's heart sank. Of course it belonged to the most intimidating delegate at the summit. The queen known for her sharp intellect, sharper wit, and zero tolerance for incompetence. He flipped through, looking for contact information, and accidentally read an entry from yesterday. Conference coordination impressive. The human Morrison, I believe, runs sessions efficiently, professional demeanor, also surprisingly attractive posterior. Note: Althari formal delegation lacks such pleasant distractions. Jake nearly dropped the planner. He read it again, certain he'd misunderstood. No. Queen Xylla Varen had written observations about his butt in her personal planner. Jake's face burned. He closed the planner immediately, mentally filing this under information I desperately wish I didn't have. The next morning's session began with preliminary announcements. The conference chair, Ambassador Kelleth, held up the planner Jake had turned in. "Before we begin, whose planner is this? It was found yesterday." Jake froze. He should stay silent, let someone else handle it, but years of professional training kicked in. Problem identified. Solution: step forward, facilitate return. "I found it," Jake said, standing. "I can return it to. It's mine," a familiar voice said from the Althari delegation section. Queen Xylla Varen rose with elegant authority, her distinctive pointed ears adorned with royal markers, her luminescent markings showing amused gold. She walked toward Jake and the chair, her gaze fixed directly on him. Jake's brain caught up with the situation about 3 seconds too late. He just publicly connected himself to finding her planner. The planner with observations about his. Xylla reached them, took the planner from Ambassador Kelleth with gracious thanks, then turned to Jake. Her markings glowed brighter gold, definitely amusement. "So," she said, voice carrying to nearby delegates, "you really like my butt." Every nearby conversation stopped. Jake's brain short-circuited completely. No, I'm teasing." Her markings shifted with barely suppressed laughter. "Though you did read my private notes, apparently." "I was looking for identification," Jake managed. "I didn't mean to. I stopped as soon as I realized." "Relax, Coordinator Morrison. I'm not offended." She studied him with open curiosity. "Though I am wondering what you thought of my observation." Jake was going to die. Right here, in front of multiple diplomatic delegations, he was going to perish from sheer embarrassment. "I think this is a conversation for later, Your Majesty," Ambassador Kelleth intervened diplomatically, clearly trying not to laugh himself. "Perhaps you're right." Xylla's markings glowed warm gold. "Thank you for returning my planner, Coordinator Morrison. We'll discuss your thoughts on my notes later." She returned to her seat, leaving Jake standing there trying to remember how breathing worked. Several delegates were definitely laughing now. This was, without question, the most mortifying professional moment of his career. Jake spent the rest of the morning's session in a state of mortified horror, hyper-aware that Queen Xylla kept glancing at him with those amused gold markings. When the session broke for lunch, he wasn't surprised to receive a message requesting his presence in the Queen's private conference room. He arrived expecting. He didn't know what. Professional reprimand. Formal complaint about privacy violation. Xylla was alone, her formal attendance dismissed. She gestured to a seat, her markings still showing amusement. "Coordinator Morrison, sit. You look terrified." "I'm mortified, Your Majesty. I genuinely didn't mean to read your private thoughts. I was just trying to return." "I know, relax." She sat across from him. "I'm not angry. I'm actually quite entertained by this entire situation." "Entertained? You looked like you wanted the floor to swallow you. It was adorable." Her markings shifted to warmer tones. Jake, may I call you Jake? I need you to understand something about authority culture. We're more direct about attraction than humans appear to be. Direct. Writing observations about someone's physical appeal is considered normal, even complimentary. It's honest acknowledgement of aesthetic appreciation. She paused. I gather humans are more private about such things. Generally, yes. We don't usually write detailed notes about people's posteriors in professional settings. Noted. Cultural difference acknowledged. Her markings showed genuine curiosity now. Are you uncomfortable with my observation? Jake tried to organize his thoughts. I'm flattered and confused and completely out of my depth. You're a queen. I'm a conference coordinator. This doesn't make sense. I'm a person who finds you attractive. You're a person who accidentally discovered that fact. What happens with that information is our choice. She leaned forward. So, what are your thoughts, Jake Morrison, on my assessment of your posterior? He laughed despite himself. This entire situation was absurd. I think you have excellent taste. I do. Her markings glowed approval. What about the rest of my notes? About your professional competence? I didn't read extensively. Stopped as soon as I realized they were personal. Pity. I had quite detailed observations about your organizational skills. Very attractive quality competence. Was the queen flirting with him? This couldn't be real. Your Majesty, Xylla, when we're private, just Xylla. Xylla, he tried the name carefully. I don't understand what's happening. I'm enjoying watching you process attraction you weren't expecting and deciding whether to pursue it. Her markings shifted to warm gold. You're interesting, Jake Morrison. Efficient, professional, and apparently able to make me laugh even when mortally embarrassed. I'd like to know you better. This is unprecedented. Good. I'm bored with precedent. They talked for another hour, past lunch break, into time they both should have spent on other things. About cultural differences in expressing attraction, about the absurdity of their first real conversation being about her written appreciation of his anatomy, about whether attraction between such different positions could be anything more than awkward curiosity. By the time Jake left, his mortification had transformed into something else, genuine intrigue. The queen found him attractive. And now that he'd gotten past initial horror, he could admit, he found her fascinating too. This was either going to be wonderful or catastrophic, possibly both. Over the following weeks, Queen Xylla continued attending minor diplomatic sessions, unusual for a monarch of her status. Jake coordinated them with increased nervousness, hyper-aware of her presence. She made occasional teasing comments that sent his composure fleeing. Excellent session management, coordinator, though I was slightly distracted by certain posterior developments. Your efficiency remains impressive, as does your posterior, multitasking at its finest. Each time, Jake blushed and tried not to laugh while nearby diplomats pretended not to notice the queen openly flirting with their human coordinator. But beneath playful tension, something genuine developed. They met regularly now, ostensibly discussing conference logistics, actually talking about everything else. Xylla shared her frustration with political constraints, the loneliness of never knowing if people valued her or her position. Jake shared his background in event coordination, how he'd chosen diplomacy because bringing people together mattered. Xylla was brilliant, funny, unexpectedly vulnerable when she dropped royal formality. Jake was competent, kind, and completely unable to be properly intimidated by her title once he got past initial terror. They fit in ways neither expected. One evening, after a particularly tedious negotiation session, Xylla found Jake in the coordination office. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble. Dangerous activity thinking. Her markings glowed amusement. "My observation about your posterior was accurate but incomplete. I find your mind equally attractive, your competence under pressure, your ability to stay calm while I deliberately fluster you." She paused. "Would you like to have dinner? Not official, not professional, just us." Jake's heart hammered. That sounds like a date. Humans call it that. Yes, then, a date. You're a queen, I'm a conference coordinator. People will talk. People always talk. I've stopped caring what they say about my personal choices. Her markings showed warmth. Unless you're not interested. I'm interested. I'm also terrified but definitely interested. Good. Terror keeps things exciting. Their first date was private, a quiet restaurant off station where no one recognized them. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests beyond diplomatic coordination. Xylla loved ancient poetry. Jake collected vintage music. Both appreciated good wine and terrible jokes. The second date was less private, walking through the station's gardens where people definitely recognized the Althari queen dining with the human coordinator. By the third date, they stopped pretending this was anything casual. I'm falling for you, Jake admitted, which is insane given our positions. Positions are just circumstances. Xylla took his hand. Feelings are what matter. And I'm falling too. Their relationship developed through careful navigation of power differences and cultural gaps. Dinner became regular meetings. Meetings became genuine partnership. Jake provided perspective on human-Althari relations. Xylla provided insight into diplomatic complexities. But also, they laughed together, shared stories, found comfort in each other's company. Eventually, they formalized their relationship publicly. The reaction was mixed. Some Althari nobles questioned their queen's choice of a human coordinator. Some humans saw Jake as advancing through attraction rather than merit. But Xylla and Jake faced criticism together. At a formal reception 6 months after the planner incident, someone asked Xylla directly, "Your Majesty, why choose a human conference coordinator as your partner?" Xylla's markings glowed warm gold. Initially, his posterior caught my attention. I wrote as much in my planner, which he accidentally discovered in the most mortifying way possible. Jake groaned good-naturedly while nearby delegates laughed. But I stayed, Xylla continued, for his mind, his humor, his competence, his complete inability to be intimidated by my title once he got past initial terror, his kindness, integrity, and the way he makes me laugh even during tedious negotiations. Best accidental discovery I've made. Jake added, "I found her planner, she found me." Everything else followed, from choosing honesty over embarrassment, and accepting that sometimes the most important relationships begin with someone writing detailed notes about your butt in their personal planner. More laughter. Later in private, Xylla asked, "Do you ever regret that day, finding the planner?" "Never, though I still can't believe you announced my posterior appreciation to multiple diplomats. I was establishing dominance. Also, watching you squirm is delightful." Her markings glowed mischief. "Besides, it's true, you do have a surprisingly attractive posterior." Surprisingly, I had low expectations for human anatomy. You exceeded them significantly. Jake pulled her close. "Well, you have surprisingly attractive everything, and I mean that in the least surprising way possible." She kissed him. Smooth recovery. I've had months of practice. What started with mortifying revelation, Jake discovering the Queen's written appreciation of his anatomy, had become foundation for genuine partnership, built on attraction acknowledged playfully rather than hidden awkwardly, on choosing to explore connection despite complications, on finding that sometimes the most important relationships begin with accidental exposure of private thoughts. Xylla's planner observation had been honest. Jake had a surprisingly attractive posterior. Jake's response had been equally honest, getting past initial mortification to discover what else they found attractive about each other. The rest followed naturally: laughter, trust, love built one conversation at a time. Sometimes the best relationships start with mistakes. Sometimes queens write detailed assessments in personal planners. Sometimes humans accidentally read them and step forward out of habit. And sometimes, embarrassment transforms into something